part of your discovery in the docuseries, there's a whole sequence where you're on a farm, you're going into a barn, and you're going and looking inside these trunks. Tell us about what that process was, how you ended up there, and what you found inside.
Well, it was completely random. I happened to be in North Carolina with my son for a relative's birthday party who was in the area, and we had gone out there for the day to go to the birthday party, and we still had to come back to Atlanta. So en route, I asked my son, because he's kind of grown up. I got two boys. They both grown up with dad traipsing around doing DB Cooper stuff. I asked him, I said, on the way home, we're going to go past the McCoy farm. If you like, we can stop in and visit, and I'll show you the grave where Richard Floyd McCoy is buried. And he said, yeah, if we got time, let's do that. So we stopped in, purely random, and happened to have a conversation with the caretaker that lived there. And one thing led to the other. And once again, I wasn't supposed to be in there. I got access to that old granary barn tobacco pack house upstairs, and I started going through things. And my son Dylan was telling me, Dad, we're going to miss our flight. And I said, yes, we are. Keep on going, keep digging. And we picked through every box, everything we were looking for, anything, just because that caretaker had told me that at some point he thought he remembered seeing something green that resembled a parachute, because he was the guy that had taken care of Myrtle's belongings when she had died. So Myrtle was Richard Floyd McCoy's mother, and she was a packer. She was a hoarder. She kept everything, and that pack house was full of stuff. And we went up there and picked through that, and that's when we found it. Dylan carried a camera with him, a GoPro, one simple GoPro, and he had it ready, and he knew how to use it. And he asked me several times, do you want me to turn the GoPro on? I said, no, because we haven't found anything yet. I'll tell you if it looks like we found something, and then I'll tell you to turn it on. So he had it ready. And when we finally found that last crate that we pulled open and pulled it out, there it was. And Dylan was ready, Johnny on the spot, and had the camera running. That's the actual footage of the actual moment. It's the actual rig. It's the actual place that we found it. And there was nothing staged. That individual was already interviewed by the FBI, and he told the same story. That visit was completely random. Our being up there was completely random. And when we found it, it was completely random. And that is the way it happened. That is where that actual parachute had been stored all those years.
And that was the missing piece for you that really opened up the beyond a reasonable doubt in your mind of, okay, this is clearly Richard Floyd McCoy. I'm fascinated that the FBI spoke to the caretaker previously, and he said that it might. Did they never just go look in that barn?
No, FBI had never been there. This was the home of Richard Floyd McCoy's mother.
Right.
So they'd never been to the property. They'd never interviewed her, and they'd never been through her things, because she is unrelated, completely unrelated.
Right. And also, he had been eliminated as a suspect pretty early on through, and you mentioned his the claim that he had been home in Utah, and as a reason why, and then he was actually not in Utah, he was in Vegas. As one of the reasons he was eliminated as a suspect, because, well, if he was in Utah, then he wasn't up in the sky, hijacking. And then, so he had been. Was there another reason why they dismissed him as well as a suspect originally?
FBI was embarrassed when this hijacking happened and he got away, and he went all those months, November, December, January, February, March, and April. He went almost 6 months where they were unable to figure out who DB Cooper was. And then the second one happens. They're embarrassed because they know the same guy just whammied us again, a second time. If there's a link between the two, now they're triple embarrassed. This hijacking happened. We couldn't catch him the first time. Now he's gone and done it again, and we haven't figured out. They were just simply embarrassed at all cost. FBI did not want it to be the same guy. And the instant Denise said, no, it couldn't have been him because he was home eating turkey with us on Thanksgiving, they were like,
we got it. Great.
That's it.
Yeah, let's get rid of it. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. That's it. Okay, go. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's as far as it went. And they relied on Denise's one testimony that he was home. That's the reason that he was eliminated as a suspect early on.
And had they not done that, maybe they would have been more likely when they spoke to the caretaker to go, all right, well, let's go check out what this person's saying and maybe investigate more. But it kind of got dropped, in favor of looking into other people. So he was arrested for the second jump. They didn't do it in a proper way. So it was his trial, but he went to jail, right? Or was it
Yeah.
for a bank robbery?
No, he went to trial for air piracy.
Okay, but then he. I'm trying to remember. Did he break out of jail?
Yes.
Okay, and then went on. Then started robbing banks.
Yeah, he broke out. He broke out of penitentiary with a guy named Melvin Walker, and they broke out together. And they never went back to prison. They stayed together out on the road, robbing banks and staying alive via robbing banks for cash. So he that run lasted almost 18 months.
So it's almost, I mean, it's a fascinating secondary story, even if apart from the DB Cooper aspect of it, you have this guy, Richard Floyd McCoy, did a skyjacking, arrested for it, went to jail, broke out of jail, doing bank robberies, and then talk about his death.
Well, there's where you, if you watch DB Cooper Part 2, the FBI killing of Richard Floyd McCoy, which happened, the FBI was staged inside of a house, inside of his home in Norfolk, Virginia. They had everybody in there. They were waiting for him to come home. Typically, when you have a setting like this and you're looking for a bad guy, you know where the bad guy is, and you surround the home from the outside and tell him to come out with your hands up. In this case, it was an ambush. They were inside with the lights out with loaded weapons waiting for him to open the front door. All that's in DB Cooper Part 2, and the FBI's statement after he shot him point blank. He let him lay there on the ground and bleed. It took 45 minutes. They would not give him aid. When the ambulance came to help him, they sent the ambulance away because he wasn't done dying yet.
And you interviewed the FBI agent who actually shot him, was there, and it was wild seeing. And you presented this to him, saying, "Hey, the ambulance, it said he was not a fatal wound. It said, you guys let him die. Why were you inside?" And he even used his own gun, a non-FBI issued gun. You kind of asked him these, and he stuck to his story. He just said, "Nah, that's not true." But could you feel in that moment that he was hiding something from you, or did it feel like he genuinely believed what he was saying?
Well, I could feel in the moment he was completely realizing that he had been led into an ambush. I completely orchestrated his ambush, knowing the answers to the questions that I was about to ask him in advance, knowing full well what I'm about to pull out and show him. I asked him questions such as, when you shot him, where did you hit him and did he die instantly? And he said, I shot him square in the chest and he died instantly. And I said, well, actually, I want to talk about this. Here's a picture of the autopsy. Here's a picture of the corpse. This is the bullet wound. And I have the copy of the autopsy. Let me read it to you. And his face, you could see the color leaving his face. I had backed him into a corner. He was on camera. He had already signed all the legal documents. He was completely trapped with 9 cameras and 4 audio sources running. And he knew he was completely trapped. Every question that I had led up to was designed specifically to ambush him, knowing what he was going to say. And in the very end, he had no good information. The ironic thing is that he used the same gun on that killing that was his own personal weapon. He took it to the killing on purpose, and after the killing, he kept it as his own personal possession. And that's not legal in the FBI world. You have to use a service weapon issued by the Bureau for those operations. And he came home. Nick O'Hara only killed one person. His entire service as an FBI agent only killed one person. And yet he took the stock of that 870 shotgun and he notched it with a notch for McCoy. And he wanted me to feel the notch in his gun. That's how proud he was of that weapon.
Yeah, that was wild. And you even interviewed other people, at least I remember one person, about that. Like, hey, you were FBI, would it be, or you're law enforcement, is it bizarre that he would bring his own gun to a stakeout or wherever you're calling this? And they're like, yeah, you get your service weapon that's from whatever, wherever you work for. You don't bring your own guns to these places. And yet O'Hara seemed to be like, nah, it was cool. I just kept it in the trunk, right?
Yeah, well, you can ask any cop, walk up and ask any cop what the odds are of you bringing your own personal gun on duty with you and putting that in your holster. What are the odds today of ever doing that? Is 0. Absolutely not. And it was the same rule in those days. You cannot bring your own personal weapons on the job.
So, let's go back again to the barn. So you discover on camera this parachute. It's got McCoy's name on it, and you show close up the stitching, as you mentioned, very shoddy stitch work, and you showed the modifications. And so the idea being, and Earl Cossie has talked about, okay, these are the modifications I made, and you found this parachute belonging to McCoy, and we know he did the 1972